So now for our CMS Insider segment. Today we're going to talk about SDL's plans to shed part of its suite. Scott, this is something you've had some conversations with their CEO about.
I have, and I think that this is, overall, I'm bullish on this idea. I think it's been a long time coming, and to be honest, not to sound Nostradamus-like, but about a year ago or so, we made the prediction that a couple things would happen. One is that their management would change over at the top senior management. I said at the time was not going to be kind of long for the long haul. And two was that I thought I could see the company splitting up a bit and them selling off some parts. And so here we are. I think this is a really good thing. I think this just goes back to the theme that we've talked about, Stephen, already before, where this idea of just knowing your audience, knowing what you do really well. We've said that 2 or 3 times already on the show today, and appealing to that audience and basically, doing what you do best and appealing to a specific audience. And I think this is SDL. Shifting away from following the masses. I think, to be honest with you, I believe that they were too focused on following Adobe's lead. What Adobe did really well and who Adobe appealed to in the marketer is not the same audience. They don't have the same reputation as SDL does, and SDL doesn't necessarily appeal to that audience so much. And I think this is really good for them to kind of acknowledge that's not who we're trying to be. We are extremely good at one thing, and that has to do with language and globalization. And so we're going to go slough off the parts that aren't core to what we do really well and focus on our audience.
But we're really talking a strategy shift here, right? This is a shift. This is coming directly from the board. The board announced this, so it's clear. There's no guesswork anymore. The board has come out saying we're putting blocks up for sale.
That's right.
And in particular, they said they're selling their non-core products. Non-core products. Define what they mean by their non-core products.
Sure. So SDL has made a series of acquisitions over the years. They started as a language technology and languages services company quite some time ago. They had a number of products around language tech, like documentation products and things like that, many of which were based on acquisitions. Then they got into the web content space when they made their acquisition of Tridian, and they had the Tridian in their web content management line of things. And then over the course of the past, maybe since 2009, 2010, they started acquiring Fredhopper, and then they acquired Alterian, which included a number of other pieces, which include their social and campaign management capabilities here. And so we're talking today about the things they're leaving behind are Fredhopper, social, and campaigns.
So let's go through each one of these in particular. So for those of us who don't know, so Fredhopper first, what are they doing there? Tell us what it's all about and why it's not part of their core business.
Sure. So Fredhopper has always been it was an interesting acquisition when they bought it for me. Fredhopper is essentially, first of all, they don't even always call it Fredhopper. It's been called, they call it
e-commerce optimization is what I'm seeing, which is an interesting
and that's
phrase.
Right. Smart Target was what they had as a name for a while. It basically is the Amazon-like capability. It was a very small company when they bought it, over in Europe somewhere. Very Amazon-like, so this notion of you bought this and so you might be interested in that, or you're basically the idea of personalizing a commerce experience. However, SDL doesn't have a commerce product, so they were basically trying to use it as their personalization engine. I never felt like Fredhopper internally within SDL even got a fair shake. I felt like I did their sales kickoff, a presentation to their sales kickoff one year, and there was a whole debate amongst SDLers even as to what Fredhopper was, whether it was search or not. So it wasn't positioned super well internally, and they tried to use some of the capabilities to create that personalization capability, and I believe they did. I believe some of that is actually still going to be left behind. But as a product, it just didn't really sell like I think it could. Frankly, if it were paired up with some sort of a commerce vendor who is trying to sell into folks who want the Amazon-like experience.
So now you're talking about who might buy them. So let's talk about, because I think these might be sold individually, who might buy a Fredhopper? Who might buy this e-commerce recommendation tool?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think that could be, the likes of a Demandware. I think that could be the likes of any, even I don't think it's so much a Hybris, because Hybris is more oriented towards B2B commerce than B2C per se, but yeah, it could be. I think, to be honest, like a Demandware is probably a high-end one. Even Sitecore's experience, their commerce capabilities. There's a number of them that are out there, kind of consumer-based commerce.
So what about the second party they're getting rid of is their social intelligence tool.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting one. Why would they get rid of that? I mean, analytics and ROI are everything these days.
You know what, indeed, but I think, to me, this one's the one that says to me, too bad. It's too bad. And I say that it's too bad because if you think about what language technology requires, this idea of kind of automatic translation of language, SDL is probably one of the best in the world at doing that. And there's an awful lot in those algorithms that those kind of language scientists, to be able to go and figure out natural language and make the translations automatically for that, the capability that's required there, I think, is very similar to the capability that could be used, the expertise that could be used to really help us move the needle in terms of social, right? Because much of this whole idea of sentiment analysis, which their social tool does, is right now, to be honest, it's not an exact science at all.
Right, for sure.
They try to give you this thing, and they've actually said, many have said 60% accuracy. I mean, that's horribly inaccurate. That's like a guess. That's almost
I
the
can
same
flip a coin and almost
chances
get
as you
there.
flip a coin. Because when you look down at the language, when somebody says socially, like, ooh, that's bad. Well, they're saying it's good or they're saying that's bad. And so I thought that the expertise that SDL had in its language scientists could really help be able to crack
Would seem
that
like it would have
mold
been a
bit.
good fit.
It did seem so. But it didn't really get a fair shake because it wasn't really selling so well. It was a part of that Alterian acquisition, didn't really have a whole lot, and it was a big services play around that just didn't get much play. So I think that could actually be bought by an existing social company.
Okay.
So not somebody who's trying to add social capabilities to their stack, but maybe a social listening company that's really trying to hone the semantic, the sentiment analysis portion.
So someone who's actually trying to
portfolio.
get that intelligence built into what they already have.
Yeah, I think so.
Interesting. So, and then the third piece we're talking about here is this campaign product, right? Their campaign management software, content targeting for each customer. Talk to me a little bit about that and why that doesn't really fit here.
So I don't think that fits merely because, again, if you're going to pull back and you're going to say that we're really good at language technology and that we're really good at helping companies globalize their content, then this is a sale to a marketer typically. And quite frankly, the campaigns product was a sale to a SMB or mid-market at best product. So typically, SDL sends to, just think about who are those companies that need to globalize. They're the larger, more complex organizations. And so they sell a more complex product. But I felt like campaigns never really was made with that same audience in mind. It was much more of a mid-market player. And so that will probably be sold off to somebody who needs mid-market capabilities and wants to add to their portfolio.
So if that's who they're getting rid of, let's talk about who they're keeping.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're really talking about here going back to their core and really being part of being basically smarter about who they're going to be now. Let's talk about what they're keeping and why.
Sure. So SDL is now kind of going to have kind of two parts, but both sell into the same audience. One is their language technology and language services, which has always been kind of, to be honest, their strength. That's been the biggest. That's the largest portion of their revenue comes from there, So that's one big division that they've got, and that stays the same. Second is what they call their global content technologies group, and that now is where the web content management platform, the Tridion product, sits underneath that, as well as a number of their kind of documentation products. They had a number of document management and documentation products that kind of also fall into that. So those are the two big divisions: global content technology and language services and language technology.
So a year ago, you saw this coming. You saw some of this might happen. It's sort of playing out. They're shedding off some pieces. They're focusing down. One of the things we talk about is knowing who you are, knowing who your audience is.
Yep.
As we look forward, a good thing for SDL. Will this bring us back to where we want to be?
I think so for them. I mean, they've had a tough couple of years, a tough slog there. If you look at SDL, for about 18 months, they were hunkering down and trying to refigure out who they are. And to be honest, this wasn't the result of that. This was the result of a shakeup when that didn't work and the board wasn't happy enough and the street wasn't happy enough. And so they ended up Mark left, the CEO left, and David Clayton has come in as the at least acting CEO. And so they gave it its time for the turnaround. And then when things didn't pick up from there, now they've said, we're going to shelf these off. So this is kind of yet again another new beginning, only about 12 months after their last new beginning. I do think this is the right one, though. I do think having this It's a more streamlined company with a very specific audience, and the ability to cross-sell between those two is much higher. You couldn't cross-sell between a marketing suite before and a language.
These fit together very well.
These fit very well together, and I think they'll be able to look to their existing base of customers from their language side, sell their global content technology to them, and vice versa.
Interesting. Well, look, like some of our other segments, I'm really curious to look forward and see where this will take them.
Yeah, I think so. I think
it'll be very interesting. Well, that's all the time we have for today's show, but make sure you catch our next show when we'll ask the question, are expectations too high for customer experience management? Or view all our previous shows on demand and our blog commentary at cms-connected.com. Before we go, I'd like to again say thank you to our sponsors, Falcon Software, Digital Clarity Group. On behalf of my co-host, Scott Liewehr, I'm Steven Saber saying so long and look forward to seeing you next time. So get connected, stay connected, right here on CMS Connected.
Your job is to cut through the noise. To succeed, you need to reach out to your target audiences in real time with messages that speak to them. You can't let technology get in the way of your brand. That's the spirit. First Spirit is a powerful solution that helps you effectively communicate and engage with your target audience. Get an awesome ROI. Success in the market means your message got through to the right people at the right time in the right way. And that's why you need First Spirit. Get started with digital marketing. Visit www.espirit.com now.